All right, time for some tough love. The Helldivers 2 community, or at least some portion of it, has been full of, let's just say, some spicy takes lately. Welcome to Radekin Rants, where I'm not going to sugarcoat things and might get a little spicy myself. If you want polished breakdowns, check out my other weapon reviews or the Good, Bad, and Ugly series. But this is me just venting. So buckle up, and yes, profanity warning ahead. Consider yourself briefed. So let's start with balance. One of the loudest complaints lately, the War Strider. Players say it reduces loadout variety because you need to bring anti-tank or more anti-tank. And players argue that it breaks automaton design rules by not having a glowing vent weak point. But that's just the status quo. That's literally status quo bias. Think about it. You call it a reduction in variety when you bring more anti-tank options. But if Arrowhead had slapped a glowing vent weak point on the back of the Strider, suddenly every medium penetration weapon in the game could kill it the same as everything else. Isn't that also reducing variety, just in the opposite direction? So it's not that you're mad about variety, you're mad about difficulty that you just happen to not like or prefer. Well, sometimes breaking the mold is a good thing. War Striders are supposed to feel different. They're not just another shoot the glowing spot kind of target. They force teams to adjust, to coordinate, and actually play the squad game that the devs have been advertising as a squad game since day one. If you're running solo, yeah, it might be rough. But if you're in a full squad, I mean, come on, 4 people and not even one of you can afford to pack anti-tank? That's not a balance problem. That's a teamwork problem. And then monetization. Every Warbond drop, the outrage starts. It's predatory pricing. This is so expensive. It's what a scam. Really? Is it really? Base game was $40. Warbonds are $10 to $15. Most of them have refunded credits embedded within the Warbond, and you can farm credits in-game. Compare that to most AAA live service games today. $70 for the base game, $30 to $50 battle passes, maybe $100 for an annual pass, and then additional skins and things like that locked behind their own paywall store. The Arrowhead's Helldivers 2 version is pretty lenient compared to all that stuff. And don't pretend we don't see players out there farming super credits like it's a full-time job so they never have to pay a dime beyond the base price. If that's you, you've got even less ground to stand on when you yell about the monetization in this game. I mean, for crying out loud, it's like the price of an expensive coffee at like a Starbucks or something, and you're telling me that that's too much? And I know not everyone's made of money, but still. Helldivers 2, the game is good, and it's pretty cheap, which means it's gonna be slow. In business and production, you can either have fast, good, or cheap, but you only get to pick 2. We got cheap and good. So stop demanding fast on the updates and everything else, unless you just want to have broken garbage. And on to known issues. Now, let's be clear. The game isn't flawless. Crashes, desync, performance drops, rupture strain disabled for some weeks, weird spawn rates, stratagem bugs, all that stuff. Yep, that is all very real, and it is very frustrating. I've felt it too. But frustration does not mean incompetence. These are not signs of laziness or malice all by themselves. They are growing pains of a live service, and it's balancing a new and recent Xbox launch, business demands. Remember, Sony is the publisher, and we've got different patch pipelines. It sucks, but it's not doomsday. I mean, Arrowhead has already stated that they didn't originally intend to expand to Xbox, at least not now, but Sony pushed the deal. That's a big change to their plans. I guarantee you that made a big difference in their production cycle. And I want to talk about the roadmap / the 60-day plan, because that's been coming up a lot recently. A lot of times I'm hearing players or YouTubers say like, oh, Arrowhead lied, they broke promises because the 60-day plan did not land flawlessly and they've deviated or otherwise failed to enact the entire plan. And man, it's like, come on, it was a roadmap. It was not a magic wand. All the language in that thing is like, this is what they want to do, this is their goals, this is what they're aiming to do, like, they're casting a vision, right? A plan is just that. It's a plan. But the best laid plans can still fall apart because life happens. Roadmaps shift. And in this case, what was the big thing that happened? Sony pushed the Xbox release into the middle of their cycle. As far as I know, it definitely happened after the 60-day plan. But even if not, adding a whole third platform that originally wasn't intended is bound to have a bunch of bumpiness in that path to success. Their priorities had to be changed, and I don't think it was malicious. Acting like their deviation or inability to fully execute every aspect of the 60-day plan, acting like that's hypocrisy or some kind of deception is just unfair. Circumstances changed, and that's the reality for everybody. That doesn't mean that Arrowhead was acting in bad faith. And speaking of bad faith accusations, this is a part that bugs me a lot. The way some players and some YouTubers are framing their frustration like Arrowhead is deliberately acting in bad faith. You know, they're lying, they don't care, they're scamming us, blah blah blah. That's all just emotional nonsense as far as I'm concerned. You want to critique the game? Do it. You want to list the issues beyond what is on the known issues list? Please, by all means do that. But throwing out these accusations about malice and lying and all this other kind of stuff based on a roadmap that they were trying to share in the instance or in the interest of good faith and transparency, that's not reasonable. That is not a reasonable take. Respect goes both ways in this kind of thing. Players get feedback, developers iterate, and that's the healthy loop. Not throwing out these weird accusations that are just based on your disappointment, not on like actual verifiable evidence to the contrary. And I do want to address some of these YouTuber attitudes that I've seen sort of cropping up. And this is important because influencers influence. And if you get a bunch of bad takes or negativity, that's a recipe for disaster, whether it's valid or not. So let's talk about that. Some YouTubers have bragged about things like, well, you know, I told the devs this patch was bad the day that it came out and that they should have reversed it and they should have listened to me right away, and, you know, maybe eventually that some things related to that got changed. And it's like, oh, well, you know, gee, if a YouTuber said it, then it must be true, right? We should just drop everything and let them run the studio. And then it's like, oh, wait. Who the fuck are you again? I'm sorry, Mr. YouTuber. I must have missed your name in the credits for this worldwide success that took almost a decade to produce. So maybe you should just stop, take a breath, get your panties untwisted before you jump off the deep end, throwing out insults and accusations at Arrowhead. You're acting like it's okay to spit in someone's face as long as you say, with all due respect, before you hawk a giant loogie at them. That's not feedback. That's just disrespect dressed up with a bow. And there are a handful of, you know, people who do this, and it's like, you know, some people are pointing out obvious problems like it's some kind of revelation, like, you know, the performance is getting really bad. We got these frame rate issues, and like, oh, the new AI caused some frame rate stuff. It's like, no shit, dude. At least some of them are keeping it civil, and I can respect that. But it's still just sort of perpetuating this negative attitude that really doesn't make sense. And then there are some developer interviews with YouTubers where you'll see this exchange going on, and it's like the YouTuber will ask a question, he'll get the answer, but then he kind of argues with them about like, nah, you should do it this way. And it's like, man, it's especially true when it comes to the talks about light penetration weapons versus medium penetration. It's like, why are you even gonna bother asking if you're just gonna word vomit what you want and how stupid you think they are and why they're wrong and why it's bad and how like, oh, I would never use light penetration, it's just not that good or viable at level 10, blah 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 blah. Whenever it's like, okay man, like, good job, good job just like interviewing yourself next time. And lastly, like I said, a lot of these with the framing, there's a lot of doom-heavy framing. This constant pessimism makes it sound like the game is just collapsing when it's really not. The tone is warping perception more than it helps. And if anything, it just speaks to the fact that sometimes being a YouTuber that's dedicated to like one or two games, when you have pain points and stuff, it's like, man, you need a break. Like, take a fucking break. It's not the end of the world. You've got 3 factions, and you've got sub factions and all this stuff, and it's like, hey, you know what? If all the problems in the game are frustrating you that much, I understand that can be like stressful if that's your main bread and butter, but find another way. Don't just keep feeding into this vacuum of negativity. You're just kind of mulching over things that have already been said and acknowledged, and just finding new ways to express your frustration isn't really helpful. And here's a reality check. It's like, are the devs lazy? Well, they've been shipping patches consistently. Whether or not they always are flawless, which let's be real, they're not. But that happens in any industry. Even car manufacturers have defects and flaws and recalls and stuff like that. You're not going to escape that kind of thing when you get involved in a complex system that is a part of your product. It's just not going to happen. Are they incompetent? Well, the game's a global hit, and now it spans all 3 major platforms, so I don't think you can say that. Stretched thin, maybe. You might say, hey, I don't know if they're using their resources wisely, but we don't know the details of that. Can't really say, but I don't think you can call them incompetent. Deceptive and malicious? No, I don't think so. I think that's just an unfair projection. And especially when you look at their track record, I don't really see a lot of evidence for that. Arrowhead isn't plotting in a lair, trying to ruin your fun or any of that kind of stuff. They are making iteration after iteration under constraints and with moving targets as they go along. Because again, they have to answer to Sony, and Sony has pushed a lot on them over time. That's not a failure. That is, frankly, part of the model. It is cheap to the consumer, it's a good end product, but it is slow to get updated and maintained. And that's just the way it's gonna be. And as a core reminder, let's just circle back here. Helldivers 2 is and always has been a squad-based game first and foremost. Every store page says that. Every trailer shows it. The core loop is teamwork and synergy and covering each other. Lone wolf runs are a really cool flex, and respect to those people who put in the time and the effort to make it happen. But that is not the focus of the game, and that's the truth of the design. You work together, you think outside the box, you get creative, and you enjoy the feeling of victory with your friends. And so yes, frustrations with the game are valid. The glitches and the bugs and all this stuff, it really does suck. The slower cadence on updates and patches, yes, it does suck. But the feedback needs to be within reason. There is a difference between a critique and a meltdown. And yeah, I know the irony. I'm ranting about people ranting. But the difference is, at least I'm trying to add perspective, not just noise and rage and anger. Helldivers 2 is a cheap, good, squad-focused game, and it's evolving constantly, and that's the reality. But that's just my opinion. That's how I see things. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Drop it in the comments. Just know, if your argument is all meltdown and no perspective, it might fuel the next Radekin rant. As always, I appreciate your support, and thanks for watching.